Is the American dream just a dream, and do Germans ever actually work? Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. In the US, Americans will often talk about European work culture as lazy because they seem to take so much vacation time or so many smoke breaks during the day that Americans question how anything actually ever gets done over there and how businesses can even stay in business with that kind of a work culture. On the other hand, Europeans will talk about how they would never work in the US because they can't imagine not having vacation time or evil overlord employers who do nothing but take advantage of their employees. Well, since we grew up in and started our working careers in the US and then 5 years ago moved to Germany to live and work, we've gathered a lot of personal experience with the realities of the work-life balances in both Germany and the US. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today in my video. Hi-ho, off to work we go, but what about PTO? When we are talking work-life balance, we are talking the division of one's time and focus between working and family or leisure activities. So let's talk about how much time Americans and Germans actually spend working. But first, let me mention that I am originally from a southern US state called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern German state of Rheinland-Pfalz. In Oklahoma, I worked for a large corporate company, but in Germany, I have been self-employed. My wife Aubrey worked in a large hospital in Oklahoma and then worked for a small clinic in Germany. In this video, I will be just presenting some of the general themes about the work-life culture between the US and Germany because, as we all know, work culture can be very different even from company to company within the same country, and I'm sure you may have different experiences based on where you live and jobs you've worked. So leave all of those thoughts in the comments below. A full-time job in Germany usually comprises between 35 and 40 hours a week. In the US, you're considered full-time if an employee employed on average at least 30 hours of service per week, but generally when you are talking full-time employment, Americans and Germans will both typically imagine 40 hours a week, and we didn't really experience a major culture shock between the US and Germany when it comes to this. However, even with the general idea of what a week's worth of full-time work being generally the same number of hours, in the US, workers clock in 400 more hours annually, the equivalent of 10 more weeks than employees in Germany. So how on earth can a generally similar definition of what it means to be full-time end up with one country working 10 weeks more a year than the other? Well, there are a few factors. First, there is overtime. Overtime work is actually a very serious subject in Germany, and if you don't speak German, can get very complicated. Actually, even if you speak German, it can be very complicated. Here, just listen to this. If your boss orders you to work 7 hours a day instead of the 6 hours agreed in your employment contract, this is considered overtime. However, this does not mean you are working overtime, as you are not exceeding the statutory maximum working hours. Wait, what? You're working overtime, but that's not overtime? See, confusing. That was a translated text from a German site trying to explain the difference between Mehrarbeit and Überstunden, both of which would be translated to just overtime in English. To try and simplify, Mehrarbeit is overtime that is work exceeding the legally allowed maximum amount of time working in a day and must be compensated with extra time off. Überstunden would be time that a boss is asking an employee to work more than the contractually agreed amount of work but doesn't exceed the legal limits. This may be either compensated financially or with time off as chosen by the employee. But what are these legal limits of work? In Germany, you may not work more than 48 hours each week according to the German Working Hours Act. This may be increased to 60 hours each week if the average working hours of 8 hours each workday are not exceeded within a period of 6 months. Part of why this seems so complicated to me, and maybe for a negative reason, is because nothing like this exists in the US. Of the 38 OECD countries, the US joins only Australia, New Zealand, and the UK with no statutory maximum length of the work week. In many US companies, there is a lot of pressure to prove yourself and work overtime or bosses demanding overtime and working from home, leading to full-time employed males working on average of actually 8.9 hours per day rather than just 8 like a normal 40-hour work week. And without a maximum work week length law, there is no limit on how much a boss can ask for. Now, it can be common in the US that if you are paid by the hour rather than salaried, you can get paid time and a half for overtime working, meaning you will get paid your normal hourly rate plus an additional 50%. If you're salaried, you usually just work the extra hours and there is no compensation, no extra time off, and you just hope your reward will be in recognition, maybe? In my corporate job, the longest day I ever pulled at the office was roughly 11 hours when I was hourly, and then when I moved to a salary job, I was expected to do the normal 40-hour work week, but also take part in phone calls with our Chinese manufacturers at least 1 or 2 evenings a week to accommodate for their working hours. These were calls I would take at home before going to bed, and since I was salaried, it was just overtime at home work I would do that came with no benefits or compensation in time or pay. It was just expected to be done. I already know talking about work culture between the US and Germany is going to be a topic that needs a part 2 and possibly a part 3. So I want to do a bit of research for those future videos by asking you guys some questions about your current work setup. What kind of desk or office chairs do you use? In the corporate office I worked at in the US, we worked in little cubicles and I had a desk and a chair that I sat at all day long. Our CEOs, however, had standing desks, and I was always pretty jealous of that because sitting for 8 to 11 hours a day was surprisingly brutal in the cheap chairs that we had. But thanks to the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot, who hooked me up with this beautiful adjustable height and desk and office chair, rather than spending hours editing, sitting in a horrible chair and feeling terrible at the end of my workday, I can switch it up and stand part of the time to stretch and end my day feeling great. I'm relatively tall, 6 foot 2 inches, and I've tried other standing desks that don't quite go as tall as I need, but this E7 Pro goes up to 128.5 centimeters, making it plenty comfortably tall for me. With the memory settings, I can easily switch from standing back to sitting, and with as much time as I do spend sitting and editing, I'm a great judge of a good office chair. Their BS12 Pro office chair is phenomenal. With being able to adjust basically anything that is adjustable, I'm able to sit comfortably with everything set exactly how I need for long editing sessions, with the ability to catch a few sneaky Z's while everybody thinks I'm in the office working. And the breathable fabric is perfect for hot days in German offices without air conditioning. Use the link in the description to check out my setup and take advantage of FlexiSpot's brand day sale for up to 50% off. Let's be honest. When it comes to finding work, one thing most people want to know is how much time they can spend not working, and time off is the second factor that affects the discrepancy in hours worked a year between Germans and Americans. And to be honest, this is where we had one of the biggest culture shocks when it comes to work-life balance. In Germany, vacation time is federally mandated, and there are different minimums guaranteed for workers depending on how much they work. But when we talk about the standard full-time employee, we usually talk about mandated minimums of 20 days of vacation per year. When Aubrey started her job in Germany, she was given the mandated minimum 20 vacation days, and we were ecstatic based on what we were used to in the US. But when we talked to Germans, they were surprised to hear of a business that actually stuck to the minimum legal limit. That's because although the government establishes a minimum, it is standard to grant additional contractual vacation days on top. Usually employment contracts provide for a higher number, 25 to 30 days in total of paid vacation days. Most of our friends who work corporate jobs in Germany have 30 days of vacation time right off the bat, and they actually consider this the normal standard minimum. In fact, I would be interested if our German audience could go ahead and write in the comments how much vacation time they started with when they started working and how much they get now. Besides paid vacation, paid holidays are also protected by German law. However, how many paid holidays you get is not determined at the federal level, but is actually going to vary based on which state or even municipality you are working in Germany. Because unlike in the US where public holidays are mostly federally set, many holidays in Germany are set at the state level or even at the local municipal level. The state with the most holidays is Bavaria with 13, unless you live in Augsburg, which has 14 because of their own Friedensfest in August, or unless you live in non-Catholic parts, which do not observe Maria Himmelfahrt, giving you only 12. The Bundesland with the least? Well, 7 states have 10 holidays, tying for the least, but in Germany, you will get roughly 10 to 14 days of paid holiday time. On the other side of the pond, the United States is the only advanced economy in the world that does not guarantee its workers paid vacation days and paid holidays. And 28 million Americans don't get any paid vacation or paid holidays, and nearly a third, 31% of US employees do not have access to PTO. Culturally though, for full-time employment at, for example, like a corporate job, you would generally expect to start at 10 days of vacation a year, which is exactly what Aubrey and I had when we worked in Oklahoma. Often companies will give more days as an employee works longer at a company as a reward for loyalty. On average though, it takes 20 years of service or more just to build up to the minimum given to full-time workers in Germany, who again start out at 20 vacation days. And in terms of paid holidays, even without laws requiring it, the average employee in the US receives an average of 7.6 holidays off per year. One of the best quotes that I've seen summing up the cultural difference here is, in Germany, vacation time isn't used as much as a bargaining chip or a luxury. It's a federally mandated right, a way of life. And therein lies the difference. Americans view vacation as a bonus. Germans view vacation as a necessary aspect of life. However, before we go thinking that Germany has this issue figured out and are doing a great thing for their workers, I will point out one thing that could use improvement in Germany, and that is a little thing Americans like to call observed holidays. If we look at an American calendar for Christmas 2022, we see Christmas fell on a Sunday, but Monday was Christmas Day observed, meaning everybody got a bank holiday on the Monday after Christmas. Why was this? Well, when holidays fall on weekends in the US, we don't just let that holiday from work go to waste like Germans do. We actually will get the Friday before or Monday following the weekend to get that day of rest in such cases. Otherwise, in Germany, you end up with a situation where, like in 2021, where first day of Christmas fell on a Saturday and second day of Christmas fell on a Sunday, but everybody was at work on Friday and back to work on Monday, completely wasting the amazing double holiday day celebration Germany has created because employees have no legal rights to make up or get paid for holidays that don't fall on work days. There, something both countries can learn from each other. So okay, let's assume an American has 10 days of paid vacation assigned and a German has their 30. There is a huge cultural difference in using it though. In the US, especially in corporate America, you are often guilted if you use vacation, and maybe your colleagues or boss won't always say it, but there is often a feeling of frustration with those that take vacation because others will have to pick up your slack. This is especially true when someone wants to take long periods of vacation at one time. For example, in 2017, my wife and I wanted to take our first international vacation as a married couple, and I was very nervous about asking for 2 straight weeks off. I actually had to go ask if it was even allowed because most people just took a few days at a time and maybe a week at most. Even my VP thought it would be okay, but I had to check first from her superior before finally granting me the time off. In a separate occasion, I even woke up insanely early to drive 10 hours from Colorado back home after a vacation so that I could clock in at work that evening and work 4 or so hours to save some time off. Because of how limited vacation time I had, every hour counted to me. But even scarier or more radically different in the US than Germany when it goes to the culture surrounding time off is how often that already minuscule amount of time off goes unused in the States. At the company I worked for in the US, it was the policy when I started that any vacation time you didn't use could roll over to the next year, and you could save them up year after year. I knew employees that had worked for the company for decades, didn't take vacation, and was saving all that time up so they could retire early and just use all the PTO then. Statistics show that more than a quarter, 27.2% of PTO went unused in 2018, and more than half of Americans don't use all their paid time off. It should be no surprise then that in 2023, 22% of the workforce rated their current level of burnout as high or very high. In Germany, the time off culture is very different. When we've talked to our German friends about taking vacation, they talk about how it is no problem to ask for vacation, and in fact, you're expected expected to do so. In Germany, you must use your vacation time that year or you will lose it. There are some exceptions, like if you physically are not able to use your vacation time for whatever reason, you can roll them over, but just for a few months of the year unless your employer allows you to roll them over even more. And not only is there absolutely nothing abnormal about asking for 2 weeks or more for a vacation at one go, but your employer must let you take at least 1 2-week long vacation per year. However, interestingly enough, studies show that nearly the same number of German workers as American workers, 21%, report their risk of burnout as high even with the weeks of time off more than Americans. When Germans go on vacation and when Americans actually take vacation time, is their work-life in balance where they are enjoying life and not actually working? Well, 68% of workers in the US and Canada admitted to working while on vacation, whereas just 37% of Germans reported working while on vacation. I work with people in the US and in Europe, and I can definitely say from my personal experience, when Americans have an out of office email set up, it generally goes something like this. I am out of office from date to date, and I will respond to you as soon as I am able to. And by as soon as I am able to, they mean when I find Wi-Fi at my resort or when I put the kids down after Thanksgiving dinner, rather than when my vacation is over and I am back in the office. It has been my experience, however, that for Europeans, their out of office emails are much more specific, that they will respond after their vacation when they are actually back in the office. This is something that I have to admit that I was actually
on vacation in Spain when I was working on the script for this video and thus perpetuating the cycle of being an American that works while on vacation and not learning anything in my time in Germany.
I'm just not good at this yet. I can't break my American habit of this, even though I so desperately want to still. When Americans talk about time off, vacation time and sick leave are usually lumped together, whereas in Germany, these are two completely separate issues, or really no issue at all. Like all the other paid time off we've already discussed, in the US, there is no mandated laws that businesses provide paid sick leave. However, sick leave policy is something that is very generally almost always included in contract negotiations, and the normal standard is that you are given 5 paid sick days a year. What happens if you're sick 6 days? Well, what's probably the most typical, if someone is sick with the flu or something, they will just suck it up and go to work still sick on that 6th day. Or really, in my experience, it was really common that unless someone was extremely ill, they would just always come to work sick so that they save the 6 days for real illnesses. Yes, thus risking spreading the illness to other employees and possibly hurting the business more by infecting more of the workforce, but we don't worry about that, I guess. But if they don't do the standard 5 sick days, some American companies market a perk of working for them is that they don't have separate vacation and sick days, rather you get 14 to 15 PTO days. Meaning if you don't get sick, you can have more vacation time, but the downside, if you get sick a lot, no vacation. In Germany, the general belief is that if you're sick, even with a cold, you should rather stay at home and get well faster than drag yourself through prolonged sickness because your body can't rest while performing at less than 100% and possibly contagion colleagues. As opposed to your employer saying you only get about a few days worth of paid sick leave, you kind of get unlimited sick leave in Germany. There's rules about how, for example, if you are sick for more than 3 days with the same illness, you must provide a doctor's note to your employer, or if you are sick with the same illness for more than 6 weeks, your employer isn't required to pay you anymore, but you are entitled to money instead from your statutory health insurance provider. In fact, the whole doctor's note was even a culture shock for us. In the US, we never had jobs that required doctor's notes if you were sick, and I have never heard of a business that did, but overall, just the overall sentiment of you should stay at home and recover if you're sick, and if you're sick, you're sick. Don't fret about not getting paid. You'll be taken care of was also a culture shock coming from a culture of thinking about how you can't afford to be sick, or you don't have the allowed time time, some other person who happens to be employing you says you are allowed to be sick. As you may have noticed in this video, we haven't talked about all aspects of work-life balance because of time constraints. Like I haven't mentioned retirement age, amount of breaks during a working day, or one of the biggest matters, maternity or paternity leave. So if you would like to see a part 2 where I cover more work-life balance issues, be sure to let me know in the comments. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is, does England or Belgium make the best fries? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you in my next video. When we are talking work-life balance, we are talking about work-life balance, we are talking the division. Work culture can be different from work culture can be not getting paid. You'll be taken care of was also a culture shock. That was kind of weird.